I've learned that survival isn't about being the strongest, it's about becoming what you need to be when everything else falls apart. My name is Lee Minju, and I suppose my story begins the night everything ended. I was 15 when the car accident took my parents. The police said it was mechanical failure, but I knew better even then. My father's business rivals had been circling for months, their threats growing bolder. When the brakes failed on that rain-slicked highway, it wasn't fate, it was murder dressed up as misfortune. I remember standing in the hospital corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like trapped insects, when the doctor told us there was nothing more they could do. My little brother Jinwoo, only 10 years old, collapsed against me, his small body shaking with sobs that seemed too big for his frame. He was a beta, stable, grounded, normal. And I was an omega, which in our world meant I was supposed to be the one being protected, the one being sheltered. But there was no one left to shelter us. I looked down at Jinwoo's tear-stained face and made a decision that would reshape everything I thought I knew about myself. Someone had to be strong. Someone had to become the shield instead of the thing being shielded. That someone would be me. The years that followed were a study in transformation. I trained my body until the delicate omega frame that had always made me self-conscious became lean and dangerous. I learned to shoot, to fight, to read people's intentions in the micro-expressions that flickered across their faces. I studied my father's business dealings and discovered the shadow empire he'd built alongside his legitimate company. The connections, the leverage, the careful balance of power that kept our family safe. Or had kept us safe until someone upset that balance. I rebuilt what was broken, but I rebuilt it differently. By the time I turned 27, I'd created something my father never could have imagined. An omega at the head of a criminal organization, feared and respected in equal measure. The businesses were legitimate fronts, but beneath them ran rivers of influence and power that reached into every corner of Seoul's underworld. The phoenix tattoo that covered my back was a promise to myself. I had risen from those ashes and I would never burn again. But here's the thing about power, it's a lonely throne when everyone sees you as either a threat or a prize. Alphas wanted to claim me, thinking my delicate features and omega status meant I'd be soft, pliant. Betas wanted to protect me, mistaking my careful facade for genuine fragility. No one looked close enough to see the steel beneath the silk. No one, that is, until Min Duri. The night I met him, I was playing my favorite role, the ordinary office worker heading home after a long shift at one of my own companies. I find it useful walking among my employees as one of them, hearing what they really think without the filter of fear or deference. Plus, there's something freeing about pretending to be powerless, even if it's just pretend. The streetlights in this part of Seoul flickered unreliably, casting pools of amber light separated by stretches of shadow. My footsteps echoed off the pavement as I made my way toward where I'd parked my modest sedan. Nothing that would draw attention, nothing that screamed wealth or danger. I sensed them before I saw them. 3 men moving with the practiced coordination of people who'd done this before. Armed robbery was common enough in this district, which is partly why I'd chosen to locate one of my businesses here. I could have avoided them easily, taken another route, called for backup. But where would be the fun in that? "Hey, pretty thing," the leader called out, stepping into my path. He was tall for a beta, with a scar running down his left cheek that he probably thought made him look dangerous. "That's a nice watch you're wearing. Why don't you hand it over?" I let my eyes widen, let my body language shift into something smaller, more frightened. "Please," I said, pitching my voice higher, breathier. "I don't want any trouble." "Smart boy," another one laughed, moving to flank me. I could see the gun tucked into his waistband, poorly concealed. An omega knows when to submit. The casual way he said it made something cold settle in my chest, but I kept my expression fearful. They surrounded me, clearly expecting an easy score, and I was just calculating which one to disable first when a voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "I suggest you gentlemen find someone else to bother." The voice was deep, resonant, carrying an alpha's natural authority amplified by something else. Actual power, the kind that came from being obeyed without question. My attackers spun toward the newcomer, and I used their distraction to get my first real look at him. Min Duri was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Tall, easily 6 feet, with sharp features that looked carved from marble and dark eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. His suit was expensive, tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and narrow waist, and he moved with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never known what it meant to be prey. I knew who he was, of course. You don't operate in Seoul's underworld without knowing about Min Duri, the alpha whose organization controlled everything from the ports to the politicians. He was brutal, efficient, and utterly ruthless with anyone who crossed him. They called him the Wolf of Seoul, and rumor said he'd earned the name by tearing apart a rival gang leader with his bare hands. Looking at him now, I believed it. "Who the fuck are you?" the leader demanded, though I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. You'd have to be stupid not to feel the danger rolling off Min Duri in waves. Someone you don't want to know, Duri replied calmly. His eyes slid to me and I felt the weight of that gaze like a physical touch. Are you all right? Yes, I think so, I managed, maintaining my frightened Omega act even as my mind raced. What was Min Duri doing here? This wasn't his territory, not officially. Thank you for... Shut up, one of the robbers snarled, pulling his gun. Big mistake. What happened next took perhaps 3 seconds, though it felt like watching something in slow motion. Duri moved, his hand flashing out to catch the gunman's wrist and twist. There was a sickening crack, broken bone, and then Duri had the gun, had turned it on the other 2 men who were backing away with their hands up. Run, Duri said softly, and they ran. Then it was just the 2 of us in that flickering pool of streetlight, with the would-be robber whimpering on the ground, cradling his shattered wrist. Duri looked at me again, and this time his expression softened just slightly. You're shaking, he observed. I was, though not from fear. Adrenaline, the thrill of having almost revealed myself, the strange electricity of being this close to another apex predator while wearing a sheep's disguise. It's just, that was terrifying, I said, letting genuine relief color my voice. It wasn't entirely a lie. Thank you so much. I don't know what they would have done if you hadn't. Don't think about it, Duri interrupted, his tone gentling. Let me drive you home. It's not safe for an Omega to be alone at this hour. Any other time I might have bristled at the assumption. But this was Min Duri, and an opportunity had just fallen into my lap. How better to understand your rival than to let him think you're harmless? That's very kind of you, I said softly. I'm Minju. Lee Minju. Duri, he replied, offering his hand. Min Duri. His palm was warm, calloused, and when our skin touched I felt something spark between us. Something that had nothing to do with Alpha and Omega biology and everything to do with recognition. For just a moment, his eyes narrowed as if he sensed something beneath my surface. Then the moment passed and he was guiding me toward a sleek black car that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. As I slid into the passenger seat, I couldn't help smiling to myself. This was going to be interesting. Over the following weeks, Min Duri became a constant presence in my carefully constructed double life. He would appear at the office building where I supposedly worked, always with some excuse. He was meeting a business associate in the area, he was checking on a property investment, he just happened to be passing by. Each time he would insist on taking me to lunch or coffee or dinner. I should have found it suspicious. I should have wondered why Seoul's most dangerous alpha was spending so much time courting an ordinary office worker. But the truth was, I was enjoying myself too much to question it closely. You're different from other Omegas I've met, Duri said one evening over dinner at an expensive restaurant that he'd somehow secured a private room in. The view overlooked the Han River, lights reflecting off the dark water like scattered stars. Different how? I asked, taking a sip of wine. I dressed carefully tonight. A soft cashmere sweater that emphasized the delicate bones of my wrists and collarbones, dark jeans that were expensive but understated. Lee Minju, the office worker, trying to look nice for his alpha suitor. You don't? Duri paused, seeming to search for words. You don't simper. Most Omegas, when they're interested in an alpha, they become almost aggressively submissive. But you challenge me. You disagree with me. You have your own opinions. Should I be more submissive? I asked, tilting my head. Would you prefer that? God, no. The vehemence in his voice surprised us both. He laughed, a low sound that sent shivers down my spine. I've had enough submissive partners to last a lifetime. They're boring, Minju. They tell me what they think I want to hear, arrange themselves however they think I want them arranged. With you, I never know what you're going to say. It's refreshing. I felt something warm bloom in my chest, dangerous and unexpected. This wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to be gathering intelligence, understanding my competition. I wasn't supposed to actually like him. Tell me about yourself, I said, deflecting. Everyone knows of Min Duri, but who are you really? His expression shuddered slightly, the way it always did when conversations turned personal. What do you want to know? Anything real, I said softly. Something that's not in the gossip columns or the business news. He was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. I collect first editions, he finally said. Classic literature. I have a room in my house that's just floor-to-ceiling books, some of them hundreds of years old. I couldn't hide my surprise. Really? Why is that so shocking? You don't seem like the reading type. Because I'm a brutal alpha who solves problems with violence? There was an edge to his voice now, something almost hurt. Because you're always moving, I corrected. Always doing, always controlling. Books require stillness. Patience. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Maybe that's why I like them. They're the only thing that can make me slow down. I found myself smiling back, and in that moment I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to explain about the phoenix on my back, about the empire I'd built, about the real Lee Minju. But I couldn't. Not yet. What about you? Duri asked. What does Lee Minju do when he's not working at his very boring office job? I take care of my little brother, I said, and that at least was entirely true. Jinwoo. He's 22 now, studying business management. He's the most important person in my life. Your parents. Dead? I said shortly. Since I was 15. Understanding flickered in Duri's eyes. So you became the provider. The protector. Someone had to. That must have been difficult. An Omega, barely more than a child yourself, suddenly responsible for a younger sibling. You do what you have to do, I said, my voice hardening despite myself. You survive. You become strong enough to survive. Duri reached across the table and took my hand. His thumb brushed over my knuckles and I should have pulled away, but I didn't. You are strong, he said quietly. Stronger than you know, I think. If only he knew. 3 months into whatever this thing between us was becoming, Duri kissed me for the first time. We were in his car. He'd insisted on driving me home again, as he did most nights now, and he'd parked outside my building, but neither of us had moved to leave. Rain drummed against the windshield, creating a cocoon of intimacy that felt separated from the rest of the world. Minju, he said softly, and there was something in his voice that made my breath catch. I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm not. He laughed, frustrated with himself. I'm not good at this. At feelings. At letting people in. But you, there's something about you that makes me want to try. My heart was pounding now, loud enough that I was sure he could hear it. Duri. Let me finish, he interrupted. I know we come from different worlds. I know you're an Omega working an ordinary job and I'm what I am. But I want you to know that when I'm with you, I don't feel like the wolf of soul. I just feel like myself. Before I could respond, before I could process the weight of what he'd just given me, he leaned in and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss started gentle, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't pull away. Instead, I let myself sink into it, let myself kiss him back with an honesty that terrified me. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone, and I made a sound low in my throat that was pure need. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Duri's eyes had darkened, his pupils blown wide, and I could scent his arousal mixing with my own in the confined space of the car. Come home with me, he said, and it wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. Please. I should have said no. I should have maintained the boundaries between us, should have kept my identity secret for longer. But I'd been playing this role for months now, and I was tired of pretending. I wanted him to know me, really know me, even if it meant risking everything. Yes, I whispered. His penthouse was exactly what I'd expected. Minimalist, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Seoul spread out below us like a carpet of lights. But he led me past the living room, past the kitchen, down a hallway to a bedroom that was surprisingly warm and lived in. Minju, Duri said, turning to face me. His hand settled on my waist, pulling me closer. Are you sure about this? Because once we start, I'm not going to want to stop. I'm sure, I said, and I was. Whatever happened after tonight, whatever complications arose from mixing business with pleasure, I wanted this. Wanted him. He kissed me again, deeper this time, his tongue sliding against mine as his hands explored my body through my clothes. I arched into his touch, my own hands coming up to grip his shoulders. He was so solid, so real, and I wanted to feel his skin against mine. Off, I demanded, tugging at his shirt, and he laughed against my mouth. Impatient, he murmured, but he stepped back and stripped off his shirt in one fluid motion. His torso was a work of art, defined muscles, smooth skin, a few scars that spoke of a violent past. I reached out to trace one that ran along his ribs, and he shivered under my touch. Your turn, he said, his voice rough with want. I hesitated for just a moment. This was it, the moment of truth. Once he saw the phoenix, saw the evidence of who I really was, everything would change. But I'd made my choice. I turned around, presenting him with my back, and slowly pulled my sweater over my head. The silence stretched, and I could feel Duri's shock like a physical weight. Then his fingers were on my skin, tracing the elaborate lines of the phoenix that spread its wings across my back. The detail work that had taken dozens of hours and considerable pain. Minju, he breathed. What really are you? I turned to face him, letting him see the truth in my eyes. I'm like you, I said simply. I'm what I had to become to protect what's mine. His eyes widened as understanding dawned. You're a mafia boss. Yes. I lifted my chin, refusing to show any shame or apology. Did you really think an ordinary office worker could hold your interest for this long? For a long moment he just stared at me. Then, incredibly, he started to laugh, a deep, genuine sound that seemed startled out of him. An Omega Mafia boss. God, you're full of surprises, aren't you? Are you angry? I asked carefully. Angry? He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup my face again. Minju, I'm fucking fascinated. I'm turned on. That tattoo, knowing what it means? His voice dropped to a growl. It's the sexiest thing I've ever seen. Then he was kissing me again, and this time there was no gentleness, no hesitation. His hands were everywhere, mapping every inch of my skin, and I gave as good as I got, finally letting myself be fully present, fully honest. He walked me backward until my legs hit the bed, and then we were falling onto it together, a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. He kissed down my neck, teeth grazing the sensitive scent gland there, and I gasped. Can I? He asked, his hand moving to the button of my jeans. Yes, I said. Yes, please. He made quick work of the rest of our clothes, and then we were skin to skin, nothing between us anymore. He took his time exploring my body, learning what made me gasp, what made me moan. When his hand finally wrapped around my hardness, I nearly came apart right there. Duri, I panted. Please, I need. What do you need, beautiful? He murmured against my throat. Tell me. You, I managed. Inside me. Now. He groaned, the sound vibrating through both of us. Are you sure? I don't want to hurt you. You won't, I promised. I trust you. And I did. Somehow, impossibly, I trusted this dangerous alpha with my body, with my pleasure, with parts of myself I'd never shared with anyone. He prepared me carefully, thoroughly, until I was writhing beneath him, begging incoherently. Only then did he finally push inside me, and the stretch and burn and fullness of it was everything I'd needed. Fuck, he groaned, his forehead pressed against mine. You feel incredible. He started moving, slow at first, letting me adjust, then faster as I urged him on with my hands on his hips, my legs wrapped around his waist. The pleasure built and built, and when he changed his angle and hit that spot inside me, I cried out. There? He asked, doing it again, and I could only nod frantically. God, you're so beautiful like this. So perfect. The praise undid something in me, and I felt my orgasm approaching like a wave about to crest. I'm close, I warned. Let go, he commanded. Let me see you come. And I did, pleasure crashing through me so intensely I saw stars. Dimly, I felt him follow me over the edge, his body shuddering against mine as he spilled inside me. We lay there afterward, tangled together, both of us breathing hard. Duri's hand traced idle patterns on my back, following the lines of the phoenix. Stay, he said quietly. Tonight. Tomorrow. As long as you want. What about the fact that I lied to you? I asked. That I've been lying this whole time? You were protecting yourself, he said. Your empire, your brother. I understand that. Hell, I respect it. Besides, he pressed a kiss to my temple. I was falling for you anyway. This just makes you even more interesting. I smiled against his chest. Even more interesting than your first editions? Way more interesting, he confirmed. And then, softer, I'm falling in love with you, Lee Minju. The real you. All of you. My breath caught. I think I'm falling in love with you too. Good, he murmured, already half asleep. That's very good. I lay awake long after he drifted off, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the weight of his arm around my waist. I'd spent so long being the phoenix, rising from ashes, keeping myself separate and protected. But maybe it was okay to let someone in. Maybe it was okay to be both strong and soft, to be both the mafia boss and the man who could fall asleep in his lover's arms. Maybe it was okay to just be me. Telling Jinwoo about Duri was both easier and harder than I'd expected. My brother had grown into a sharp, observant young man who'd inherited our father's head for business and our mother's emotional intelligence. When I showed up at our shared penthouse the morning after spending the night with Duri, Jinwoo took one look at me and grinned. So you finally did it, he said, not looking up from his laptop where he was reviewing quarterly reports. You finally told him. How did you? I started, then shook my head. Of course you knew. Hyung, you've been sneaking around like a lovesick teenager for months. It wasn't exactly subtle. Jinwoo closed his laptop and gave me his full attention. So, how did he take it? I poured myself coffee, buying time to organize my thoughts. Better than I expected. He said it made me more interesting. More interesting than what? His first edition book collection, apparently. Jinwoo laughed, the sound bright and genuine. I like him already. When do I get to meet this alpha who's got my terrifying brother acting like a blushing omega? I'm not blushing, I protested, though I could feel heat creeping up my neck. You absolutely are. Jinwoo's expression softened. But seriously, Hyung, are you happy? Does he treat you well? He does, I said quietly. Better than I thought I could be treated. Like I'm precious but also capable. Like I'm both things at once. Then that's all that matters. Jinwoo stood and pulled me into a hug. You deserve this. You deserve to be happy. You've spent 12 years protecting me, building our empire, being strong for both of us. It's okay to let someone take care of you too sometimes. I hugged him back, my eyes stinging. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best, he said. Then pulling back, but if he ever hurts you, I don't care how powerful he is. I'll find a way to make him regret it. There's the Lee family ruthlessness I know and love, I said with a smile. Integrating our lives proved surprisingly smooth. Duri and I fell into a rhythm. Nights spent at his penthouse or mine, days managing our respective empires with a new understanding of each other's world. We were careful at first, keeping our relationship private, but gradually word began to spread through Seoul's underworld. The wolf and the phoenix were together. The reaction was mixed. Some saw it as an alliance that would make both organizations stronger. Others saw it as a potential powder keg. What would happen if we ever disagreed on territory or business? But most, I think, were just fascinated by the novelty of it. An alpha mafia boss and an omega mafia boss, together, breaking every expectation and stereotype. We had our first real test 3 months into our relationship. I was at one of my warehouses overseeing a shipment when my phone rang. Duri's name flashed on the screen and I answered immediately. Where are you? His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the edge of violence beneath it. The warehouse on the south side. Why? Someone hit one of my drug operations. Took out 5 of my men. I'm tracking the attackers now, and Minju. He paused. They're heading in your direction. I was already moving, my hand instinctively going to the gun I always carried. How many? 10, maybe 15. Heavily armed. I'm on my way, but I'll handle it, I said calmly. How far out are you? 15 minutes. Minju, please just secure the building and wait for me. Don't engage. The sound of gunfire cut him off. I dropped behind a crate as bullets chewed up the space where I'd been standing moments before. My men were already returning fire, the warehouse erupting into chaos. Can't wait, I told Duri, then ended the call. I moved through the warehouse like water, my body remembering every hour of training, every combat scenario I'd drilled. 2 attackers came around a corner and I took them down. 1 shot, 1 knife, both dead before they hit the ground. My men were good, but they weren't expecting this level of assault. I needed to turn the tide. I grabbed one of my lieutenants. Fall back to the secondary position. Set up crossfire. I'll draw them deeper in. He started to protest. Omega shouldn't be on the front lines, his expression said, but I just glared at him until he nodded and moved to carry out my orders. The next 10 minutes were a blur of violence. I was outnumbered, but I had home advantage, knowledge of the warehouse layout, and years of experience. By the time I heard Duri's voice shouting my name, 6 attackers were dead and the rest were fleeing. I stepped out from behind cover, gun still in hand, blood spattered across my face and clothes. Duri stood in the warehouse entrance, frozen, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I told you to wait, he finally said. And I told you I'd handle it, I replied calmly. Did you track where they came from? He crossed the space between us in 3 long strides and pulled me into a crushing embrace, his face buried in my neck. You could have died, he said, his voice rough. I could have lost you. But you didn't, I said softly, holstering my gun so I could wrap my arms around him. I'm okay. I'm here. He pulled back to look at me, his hands coming up to frame my face. I know you told me you were a mafia boss. I know you said you weren't a weak omega. But seeing you move like that, fight like that, he let out a shaky breath. It's different. It's real. Does it bother you? I asked carefully. That I'm like this? Bother me? He laughed, the sound almost wild. Minju, I've never been more attracted to you. Watching you take down those men, protect your territory, lead your people, it's the hottest thing I've ever seen. You're not just strong, you're lethal. You're magnificent. And then he was kissing me hard and desperate, right there in the warehouse with my men watching and bodies cooling on the concrete floor. I kissed him back with equal fervor, channeling all the adrenaline and fear and relief into the press of our lips. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. We should probably clean this up before we continue this conversation. Yes, he agreed, though he didn't let me go. But Minju? Never scare me like that again. Can't promise that, I said honestly. This is what I do. What we both do. He nodded slowly. Then promise me this: we protect each other. We fight together when we can. We trust each other to be strong enough to handle what we have to. That, I said, I can promise. Word of the attack, and of how I'd handled it, spread quickly through Seoul's underworld. The balance of power shifted subtly but definitively. Before, I'd been respected but somewhat dismissed, an anomaly in a world that expected Omegas to be submissive. Now I was feared. The Phoenix wasn't just a metaphor, it was a warning. And with Duri at my side, we became something unprecedented. A true power couple, neither subordinate to the other, both deadly in our own right. We started coordinating our operations more closely, finding synergies between our organizations. His control of the ports meshed perfectly with my shipping businesses. My tech infrastructure enhanced his distribution networks. Together, we were building something bigger than either of us could have managed alone. But it wasn't just about business. It was about us, about learning to be partners in every sense of the word. I need to tell you something, Duri said one night as we lay tangled together in his bed, the city lights casting patterns across our skin. His hand was tracing idle patterns on my bare hip, his touch gentle despite his strength. What is it? I asked, turning to face him. He was quiet for a moment, his expression serious. I've never said this to anyone before. Never felt it, honestly. But Minju, I love you. Completely. The fierce way you protect your brother, the cold calculation when you're making a business decision, the soft sounds you make when I'm inside you, all of it. I love all of you. My breath caught. We danced around this before, hinted at it, but hearing him say it so plainly, so vulnerably, made something crack open in my chest. I love you too, I whispered. I didn't think I could. I thought I'd made myself too hard, too closed off. But you see past the Phoenix to the person underneath. You make me feel like I can be both strong and soft. He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You're both. That's what makes you extraordinary. We made love again then, slow and sweet, mapping each other's bodies with new understanding. When he moved inside me, it felt like coming home. When I clung to him, gasping his name as pleasure washed through me, it felt like safety. Afterward, as we lay in the aftermath, our breathing slowly returning to normal, Duri spoke again. Move in with me, he said. Officially. Bring Jinwoo if you want. This place is big enough for 10 people. But I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want this to be real, permanent. I should have hesitated. Should have thought about logistics, about what it would mean for our organizations, about 1,000 practical considerations. But instead I just smiled. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll move in with you. The next few months were a study in domesticity mixed with deadly business. Jinwoo took over my former penthouse, claiming he was tired of listening to his brother's sex life anyway, which made me blush and made Duri laugh. I merged my headquarters with Duri's, our lieutenants learning to work together, our operations becoming seamlessly integrated. We went to war twice, once with a rival gang that thought our relationship made us weak, once with a corrupt politician who tried to leverage our connection against us. Both times we won decisively. The message was clear. The Phoenix and the Wolf were stronger together than apart. But my favorite moments weren't the battles or the victories. They were the quiet mornings when I'd wake up wrapped in Duri's arms, his face soft in sleep. The evenings when we'd cook dinner together, arguing playfully about spices and techniques. The nights when he'd read to me from his first editions, his voice turning the words into poetry. One evening, about 8 months into living together, I came home from a particularly brutal negotiation to find Duri in his study, looking uncharacteristically nervous. What's wrong? I asked immediately, my mind already running through worst-case scenarios. Nothing's wrong, he said quickly. I have something for you. He held out a small box and my heart started pounding. It was too small to be a weapon, too elegant to be a business document. I took it with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside was a ring, platinum, with a subtle phoenix design worked into the band. I know we can't get legally married, Duri said, his words coming fast. I know there are laws and complications and it's not recognized. But I want you to have this anyway. I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours. I cut him off by kissing him, the box still clutched in my hand. When I pulled back, there were tears on my cheeks. Yes, I said. Whatever this is, whatever we're calling it, yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Duri had probably been planning this for months, typical alpha that he was. I have one for you too, I admitted. I was waiting for the right moment. His eyes widened. You were? I went to my own office, the smaller one adjoining his, and retrieved the box I'd been hiding in my desk. Inside was a matching ring but with a wolf design instead of a phoenix. Partners? I said as I slid it onto his finger. In everything. Always. Always, he echoed, and then he was kissing me again, and our rings clicked together as our hands intertwined, and it felt like a promise being made and kept all at once. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday. It shouldn't have been possible, I was on suppressants, we were careful, but biology has a way of surprising you. When I saw the positive test, I sat on the bathroom floor for a full 10 minutes, my mind completely blank. An Omega Mafia boss was already an anomaly. A pregnant Omega Mafia boss was unprecedented. I didn't know how to feel. Terror certainly. Joy surprisingly. And underneath it all, a fierce protectiveness that reminded me of the night my parents died, when I'd looked at baby Jinwoo and decided I would do anything to keep him safe. Telling Duri was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I need to talk to you, I said that evening, finding him in his study. He took one look at my face and immediately stood, concern written across his features. What's wrong? Are you hurt? Is someone threatening you? No, nothing like that. I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. The silence stretched. Duri's expression went through several emotions too quickly for me to track. Shock, confusion, fear, and then, finally, a sort of odd wonder. Pregnant? He repeated as if testing the word. You're sure? Took 3 tests. They were all positive. And you? He swallowed hard. Do you want to keep it? Yes, I said, surprising myself with the certainty. I know it's complicated. I know it's dangerous. But yes, I want this. I want a family with you. He crossed the room in 2 strides and dropped to his knees in front of me, his hands settling gently on my still flat stomach. A baby, he whispered. Our baby. Are you happy? I asked, my voice small. He looked up at me and there were tears in his eyes. Happy? Minju, I'm terrified and thrilled and I don't know how we're going to do this, but yes. I'm so fucking happy I could burst. I laughed, relief flooding through me, and pulled him up so I could kiss him properly. We'll figure it out, I said. Together. The pregnancy was both easier and harder than I'd expected. Easier because I'd spent years training my body to be strong, and apparently that translated to handling morning sickness and fatigue better than most. Harder because I was still running a criminal organization, and being pregnant didn't make my enemies any less dangerous. Duri became impossibly protective. He wanted me to step back, to let others handle the risky operations. I reminded him repeatedly that I was pregnant, not made of glass. You could get hurt, he argued one night after I'd returned from a meeting with some particularly volatile partners. The stress alone. The stress of not being able to do my job would be worse, I countered. I'm not going to hide for 9 months, Duri. That's not who I am. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I know that. But Minju, you're carrying our child. Doesn't that change anything? It changes everything, I said softly. But it doesn't make me weak. Our child deserves to have a parent who is strong, who doesn't back down, who can protect them. I'm showing them that right now. He pulled me into his arms, his hands settling protectively over my growing belly. You're right. I'm sorry. I love you both so much. The thought of anything happening. Nothing's going to happen, I promised. We're going to be fine. As my pregnancy progressed, something strange happened. Our enemies started treating me differently. Not with less respect, if anything with more. An Omega who could lead a mafia organization while pregnant was clearly not someone to underestimate. We announced it officially when I was 5 months along, my belly finally too obvious to hide. The response was overwhelming, gifts from allies, cautious congratulations from rivals, and 1,000 news articles speculating about what this meant for Seoul's underworld. Jinwoo was over the moon about becoming an uncle. He immediately started buying baby clothes and books about child development, declaring that he was going to spoil his niece or nephew rotten. Do you know what you're having? He asked during one of our weekly dinners. Not yet, I said, rubbing my belly absently. We want to be surprised. I bet it's a boy, Jinwoo said. A little alpha who's going to be as terrifying as both his parents combined. God help us all, Duri muttered, but he was smiling. I went into labor on a rainy night in October, 3 weeks before my due date. We were at home, reviewing security reports, when the first contraction hit. I gasped, my hand going to my stomach, and Duri was immediately at my side. Is it time? He asked, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I think so, I managed. We should. Another contraction, stronger this time. We should go to the hospital. The drive was a blur. Duri held my hand the entire time, his own hand shaking slightly. At the hospital, a private facility that we'd vetted thoroughly for security, the medical team was already waiting for us. The labor was long and difficult. 18 hours of pain that felt like it would never end. But Dury stayed with me the entire time, letting me squeeze his hand hard enough to bruise, whispering encouragement and love and promises that I was doing amazing. Finally, I heard the most beautiful sound I'd ever experienced. My baby's first cry. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, placing the tiny, perfect bundle on my chest. I looked down at my son, our son, and felt my heart expand in ways I didn't know were possible. He had Dury's nose and my eyes, and he was screaming his tiny head off, clearly unhappy about being forced out into the cold world. "Hello, little one," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Welcome to the family." Dury leaned over both of us, his own face wet with tears. "He's perfect," he said, his voice breaking. "You're both perfect. What should we name him?" I asked. We debated names for months but never settled on anything. Now, looking at our son, the answer seemed obvious. "Minho," I said. "It means brave and heroic. Because he's going to need to be both with parents like us." "Minho," Dury repeated, testing it. Then he smiled, brilliant and full of joy. "It's perfect. He's perfect. Our family is perfect." And lying there, exhausted and sore and deliriously happy, holding our son while the man I loved held both of us, I had to agree. 5 years later. Appa. I got another one. I looked up from the security briefing I was reviewing to see my son Minho running into my office, his little face flushed with excitement. At 5 years old, he was the perfect combination of both his parents, Dury's sharp features and alpha intensity, my chestnut hair and brown eyes, and a personality that was somehow both sweet and terrifyingly focused. "Another what, baby?" I asked, setting aside my work to give him my full attention. "Another bad guy." He held up his toy gun proudly. Uncle Jinwoo was playing the villain and I caught him, and now he's in jail. Jinwoo appeared in the doorway, his hands raised in mock surrender. "It's true. I've been defeated by the greatest detective in Seoul." "I'm not a detective," Minho corrected seriously. "I'm a mafia boss like you and Abba." I exchanged a look with Jinwoo, fighting back a smile. "Baby, you can be whatever you want to be. You don't have to be like us." "But I want to be like you," Minho insisted, climbing into my lap. His small hand went to my chest, right over my heart. "You're the strongest, bravest Appa in the whole world." My throat tightened with emotion. "And you're the best son in the whole world." Even when I accidentally shot Abba's favorite vase with my toy gun? Even then, I confirmed, though Dury might have disagreed. Speaking of Dury, he appeared in the doorway, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. Even after years together, the sight of him still made my heart skip a beat. "There's my family," he said warmly, crossing to kiss me and then scoop Minho up into his arms. "Have you been good for your Appa today?" "I was very good," Minho declared. "I did all my reading practice and I only threatened Uncle Jinwoo a little bit." "Threatened?" Dury raised an eyebrow at me. "He told Jinwoo he'd send him to sleep with the fishes if he didn't play with him," I explained. "We really need to stop watching those old mafia movies around him." "But they're educational," Dury protested, grinning. "They're giving our son ideas." "Our son was born with ideas," Dury said, ruffling Minho's hair. "Just like his Appa." We settled into the evening routine we'd developed over the years. Jinwoo stayed for dinner, he always did, and we ate together as a family, Minho chattering about his day at his private kindergarten. The school didn't know who his parents really were, which was how we wanted it. Minho deserved as normal a childhood as we could give him. After dinner it was bath time, then story time. Tonight it was Dury's turn to read, and he settled into the chair beside Minho's bed with one of his precious first editions. "Carefully," I warned from the doorway. "I'm always careful," Dury said, opening the book. "Right, Minho?" "Right," our son agreed, already snuggling into his blankets. "Abba treats books like their treasure." "That's because they are treasure," Dury said, beginning to read. I watched them for a moment, my alpha and my son, their heads bent together over the book, and felt my chest fill with so much love I thought it might burst. This life we'd built, this family we'd created, it was everything I'd never known I wanted. Later, after Minho was asleep and Jinwoo had gone home, Dury and I retreated to our bedroom. He pulled me into his arms, his hands settling on my hips as he pressed a kiss to my temple. "I love our life," he said softly. "I love you. I love Minho. I love that we get to do this together." "Even the dangerous parts?" I asked. "Especially the dangerous parts," he said. "Because we face them together. The phoenix and the wolf, united." "Always," I agreed, tilting my head up to kiss him. The kiss deepened, his hands sliding under my shirt to touch bare skin. Even after all these years, the attraction between us hadn't dimmed. If anything, it had grown stronger, deepened by love and trust and shared experience. Bedroom, I murmured against his lips. Now. He didn't need to be told twice. We fell into bed together, our movements practiced and familiar but no less passionate for it. He knew exactly how to touch me to make me gasp, where to kiss to make me arch into him. And I knew how to drive him wild, how to make him lose his careful control. When he entered me, it felt like coming home. I wrapped my legs around his waist, pulling him deeper, and he groaned against my neck. I love you, he panted as he moved inside me. Love you so much. Show me, I demanded, and he did, setting a pace that had me crying out his name, had me clutching at his shoulders as pleasure built and built. When we finally came together, it was with the kind of perfect synchronicity that only came from years of knowing each other's bodies intimately. We collapsed together afterward, sweaty and sated, his arms wrapped around me protectively even in satisfaction. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly into the darkness. Taking in an Omega who lied to you? Building a life with someone as dangerous as you are? Never, he said immediately. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Lee Minju. You and Minho. This life we've built. I wouldn't change a single moment. Not even the time I accidentally shot you during target practice? Okay, maybe that moment, he admitted, and I could hear the smile in his voice. But even that's kind of a good memory now. I laughed softly, burrowing deeper into his embrace. I love you, Minduri. Thank you for seeing me. All of me. Thank you for letting me, he replied, pressing a kiss to my hair. Thank you for trusting me with your heart, with your truth, with our son. You've given me everything. We lay there in comfortable silence, and I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that night in the alley when he'd saved me, or thought he had, to now, sharing a bed and a life and a child. From enemies who didn't know they were enemies, to lovers, to partners, to family. The phoenix and the wolf. Fire and Fong. Both deadly, both powerful, both capable of incredible gentleness with each other and with the small person sleeping down the hall. I'd spent so long being strong for others, protecting Jinwoo, building my empire, proving that an Omega could be just as dangerous as any Alpha. But with Duri, I'd learned that I could be strong and soft. I could be the feared phoenix and also just Minju, the man who liked to cook breakfast on Sunday mornings and read bedtime stories to his son. Outside our window, Seoul sparkled with a million lights, each one representing a life, a story, a possibility. And here, in this room, in this bed, in this man's arms, I had found my story's happiest chapter. Minho would grow up knowing both sides of his parents, the dangerous and the gentle, the powerful and the loving. He would learn that strength came in many forms, that love and leadership weren't mutually exclusive, that family was worth protecting with everything you had. And he would grow up surrounded by love, from his parents, from his uncle Jinwoo, from the found family we'd built in our organizations. He would be cherished and protected and taught to be strong and kind in equal measure. The future stretched out before us, uncertain as always in our line of work, but also bright with promise. Whatever came, we would face it together. The phoenix would rise, the wolf would hunt, and our little family would survive and thrive because that's what we did. That's what love made possible. As I drifted off to sleep in Duri's arms, I smiled. The boy who'd lost everything at 15 had found everything he'd never known to dream of. And it was more than enough. It was perfect.